decision making in business, ethics, artificial intelligence, and anti-corruption. I think this is very interesting topic of how we can actually integrate technology, especially in artificial intelligence, and also anti-corruption to how we can build a good decision-making process. I think Dr. Gerard, as an expert in the area of artificial intelligence, particularly, and also Professor Haryono Umar, as an expert in anti-corruption, will give a very interesting talk, and we can learn so much from both of our distinguished speakers this morning. So I don't want to take longer time because I think everyone is waiting for the talk and discussion. So again, on behalf of Perbanas Institute, we would like to thank all the speakers for their time and willingness to share their knowledge. Thank you very much, and have a great seminar. Hopefully, we'll have a fruitful discussion. And please ask as so many questions as possible to our distinguished speakers so we can get more knowledge. Thank you. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, thank you very much for Mr. Haria Jamal Widi Putra as the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs that has already delivered the speech. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, now let's move on to the next agenda. We are going to have an introduction from Certified Public Accountant that will be addressed by Bapak Putra Idealis. Therefore, we would like to invite Bapak Putra. Please welcome Bapak Putra.
Okay, terima kasih. Thank you, Ibu, for the opportunity given to us in Australia here. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu, respected colleagues as well from CP Australia. I would like to give my welcome remarks to Bapak Dr. Haria Jamal Widi Putra as a Vice Rector for Academic Professional Perbanas Institute, and then Dr. Edi Juwono as well as Vice Rector as well, and then Professor Dr. Haryono Umar. Pak Haryono, terima kasih Pak. As Dean of Graduate School Program, Bapak Acong Dewan Toro, as Vice Dean of Graduate Programs Perbanas Institute. Thank you Pak for the opportunity. And then our guest speaker, of course, Dr. Gerhard. Thank you. And then my colleagues here from CP Australia, Selvi Tanggara, and then Daniel Pratiwi, Perbanas Institute lecturers and students who have attended the session with us here as a face-to-face, and we have also participants from the online. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. My name Putra Idealis. I am from CP Australia Indonesia office. So I would like to give a brief introduction about CP Australia. Okay, next slide. Look, yes. Where is it? Okay. So this is brief information about CP Australia as one of the global accounting bodies in the world. So we are one of the 10 largest accounting bodies. We have our establishment first in the 1886 in Melbourne, Australia. And then as per today, we have a total membership of more than 170,000. And they work in 100 more countries. We are, of course, a member of IFAC. So for those of you who don't know about IFAC, IFAC is an International Federation of Academics, International Federation of Accountants, and they are like a UN for the accountants. So many accounting bodies if they are globals, they have to be part of the IFAC. And what we do as an organization, CP Australia provide a program. So we create program and we create the book, and then we also create the exam before they are going to have the full CPA Australia designation. So we don't only conduct the exams, but we create all. So candidates who study our programs no need to take another reference book from the outside, but they are only accessing our online learning, and they are getting a full support of CP Australia program. And then our program is self-study. It is an online basis. It is a self-study, so you can study and learn anywhere. You can do the exams in Jakarta, in the test centers. We have 3 test centers in Jakarta, and then globally we have about 400 test centers. Also, the content of the program is equal to postgraduate degree. And number 2, CP Australia also provide the designations. So we call it in Indonesia gelar sertifikasi profesi. This is like a profession certificate for you for the professional finance and accountants, which is really important. We have 3 kind of designations: associate, CP Australia, and fellow CPA. And we have our core member services mainly for the members. So we provide continuous professional development activities, some activities like this, joint seminar, workshop, and everything related to the professional advancement. And then we also provide advocacy, education, and tech support for our key stakeholders. CP Australia have 19 offices, and we are in the region. We are the youngest. Despite Indonesia, we also have office in Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia. And our program is recognized globally by the higher education or universities providers. In Australia, we have a close relationship with ANU, Deakin University, Captain Monash University, and others. And then Singapore, NTU, and US. And then with UK, we have a Coventry University. It means when you have CP Australia designations, and then you want to continue your master degree in these universities, you can get exemption for your master's degrees in their universities. And then we have also global employer partners, and we have cooperation with the accounting bodies. The cooperation, we call it MPA, Membership Pathway Agreement, and MRA, Auto Recognition Agreement. Next, please. Okay. Oops. Oke, nggak mau lagi, Mas. Oops. Okay, thank you, Mas. So this is CP Australia Indonesia office. We are 10 years old last year. We just celebrated our 10 years anniversary. And last year, we just graduated 70 new members of CP Australia. And at the same time, we conduct the webinar session related to the sustainability reporting. So many of our members came from these employers. So our greatest supporter came from the big bank. It is like a PwC, EY, Deloitte, etc. And then with the some of them also came from the local public accounting firms, and then the tax services as well. And from banks, we have Citibank, HSBC, BCA, Bank Mandiri. So from the e-commerce, we have members from Dana. The CFO of Dana is our members, and then Goto as well, Cirto, Flip ID. Most of the CFO were our members. And then from the energy and oil, we have Adaro Haliburton, and then state-owned enterprises. So the members' background were actually various. So it's not from just public accounting firms, but they are really practicing and a C-level of the many global companies. Seperti bisa ya. Okay, this is a little bit information about how you can access, how you can join CP Australia to 3 pathways. The general admissions is the basic one, and then the middle from the employer and or education. So if you have graduated from bachelor degree in some of our university partners, you can become directly as our associate member. And on the very right side is the membership pathway agreement that we have with IAI. So lecturers here, if you have CA Indonesia from IAI, you can directly become CPA Australia if you graduated or if you have that designations between 1957 until 2003. And after that period, you have to do 2 exams only instead of 6. Mindful of the time, so I mean pass on this some information here. So if you like to know more about CP Australia, you can scan this QR code. So you will be directed into some pages, into some page, and then it will require you to fill in some of the information. We will contact you further. My last slide, this is our contact. So if you have any further questions, you can reach us directly through email or WhatsApp. Thank you so much. I will give back to the MC.
All right, thank you very much, Bapak Putra Idealis, who has already introduced about the CPAs Australia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite Mr. Thomas that he will introduce about the UTS. Okay, the time is yours. Please welcome Mr. Thomas.
Should I close this one? Okay, thank you. Is that showing up? Okay. Yes. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you for having us from Australia to present our university introduction to you guys. And thank you to our honorary dean and the academic from the institutes and all our friends and colleagues online. So my name is Thomas. I work as the International Development Manager at UTS Business School. So I'll just do a very short introduction to who we are at University of Technology, Sydney. Okay, our university, as of 2021, we have 45 to 46,000 students on campus. So we still kind of think we are a medium to large scale university. Among these 45, 46,000 students, about 11,000 are international students from all over the world. So for staff, including academic staff and professional staff, we have 3,857 full-time staff. Our university is relatively young. We gained a university status back in 1988. So we are about 35 years next year, 34 this year. Okay, so we are #1 young university in Australia. So to be a young university, it has to be under 50 years old. Okay, so we provide more than 150 undergrad and bachelor degrees and more than 240 postgrad degree, including a coursework postgrad and research postgrad. We have more than 262,000 alumni around the world, not just in Australia, but our alumni networks extend to Asia, Europe, America, Africa, Middle East. Now we have 5 locations of our campus. I'll show a little short, about 3 minutes video later to show our main campus. So our main campus is in Broadway, right in the city of Sydney. This is the rankings. I know ranking is not everything, but it's actually quite important indicators of how much achievement that we have over the years. You can see that for time, world rankings, we are currently 133 in the world and 137 globally by QS rankings. This is our discipline groups. So all the way from architecture, we consider our university very comprehensive. From architectures to business, communications, design, science, mathematics. So, and business school at UTS is one of the biggest faculty among all the discipline groups. Campus. So in the past, we spent about $1 billion+ to invest in our campus. So basically building one academic, like one building every 2 or 3 years. So we have our business building designed by Frank Gehry. So that's the only building that he designed in Australia. And you will see that later in the video. Okay, so let me just find out what my video is. Sorry. Can they actually see the video online? No. You're in the matrix. Yeah, I know. I'm in the matrix. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So how do I play this thing? All right, so that's our campus there. Hopefully it's still there, right? Okay, so without further ado, that will conclude my introduction. And again, thank you very much for having us here. And thank you for CPA Australia Indonesia for connecting us with Asia. Thank you.
Well, okay, thank you, Thomas. That we have already introduced UTS, so it means that since we can find out how UTS, University of Technology Sydney. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, now it comes to the exchanging session of token of appreciation that will be handed or that will be addressed by Professor Dr. Haryono Owen to CPA Australia to Bapak Putra Idealis. Please come to the stage. Or will you stay here? Okay, we will. Yeah. Yeah. This one. Probably in the middle. Yeah. You too. You too.
Okay.
No, yeah. So this four, and then actually I would like to be. It will be the what is it?
Okay.
Oh yeah, it will. You have face to that. Oh, yeah. Is it okay? Yeah, so that the audience will see you then. Yeah, okay, you'll be much better. And then this one from the CPA to Perdana Sales Teaching.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And the next will be, okay, the token of appreciation will be given to UTS. We would like to invite the representative of UTS. Yeah, from Perbanas to UTS, and then the next from UTS to Perbanas. To UTS first, I think. Okay. And then this is from UTS to Perbanas. We would like to invite the distinguished guest, Bapak Acong. Okay, would you like to take a picture together, and then also Bapak Putra, Ibu Sylvie, Mr. Thomas, all together here. Okay, facing to the yes, please. Kita balik. Biar ada belakang. Take out the mask. Yeah. Yeah, and Paya as well. Okay, please, okay, show. Okay. From the screen. Okay, thank you. And then would you like to turn around again? Facing to the audience. Yeah, okay. All right, then. Okay, and all the participants in the Zoom, would you like to kindly open your camera on? Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the next agenda that we are waiting for the presentation of our speaker today. We would like to invite our two speakers to be with us, Dr. Gerhard Hambusch and Professor Haryono Owen. Before we start our discussion, I would like to invite Dr. Harya Darmanwidi Putra to hand in certificates to our speakers today, followed with taking pictures together. Yes, it will be handed virtually then, so sorry.
Okay, on behalf of Professor Dr. Hermanto Siregar, Director of Perbanas Institute, I'd like to present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Gerhard Hambusch as a speaker on our OASE, the third OASE program, with theme decision making in business, ethics, artificial intelligence, and anti-corruption. Thank you very much, Dr. Gerhard, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And also would like to present this certificate of appreciation on behalf of our rector to Professor Dr. Haryono Umar as a speaker on OASE-3 with theme decision making in business, ethics, artificial intelligence, and anti-corruption. Thank you very much, Professor Haryono Umar.
Well, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Haria Damar Widiputra, who has already handed the certificates to the speakers. Then. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to invite Dr. Gerhard Hambus to take a seat in front of us. Yeah, okay.
Would you like me to take a mask
Yes,
off?
please. It will be much better to take off the mask.
Sounds good.
All right, then. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to read the curriculum vitae or the summary of Dr. Gerhard Hambus. Dr. Gerhard Hambus is a senior lecturer finance discipline group from UTS School of Business. Gerhard is associate head international in the finance department at the UTS Business School. He has a passion for educating and influencing the finance industry to procure the effective integration of ethics within it. Gerhard's research focuses on solution to problems posed by unethical conduct in the finance industry and the broader impact of human behavior in capital market settings. His ethics research raises awareness for finance-related ethical and social justice issues, and his finance research fosters increased understanding of the way that human behavior can influence investment outcomes. Publications include studies on gender equity, on corporate applied network science, consideration of the impact of perception of wrongdoing in respect of different types of insider trading, journal of investing, analysis of the relative efficacy of ethics elective in contrast to mandatory ethics education, journal of financial education, research on the impact of analysis forecast errors on fundamental indexation, journal of asset management, momentum in sovereign bonds or journal of fixed income, and leverage investment and agency conflicts, Journal of Economics, Dynamics and Control. Gerhard is highly engaging speaker and top-tier UTS teacher. His excellence in teaching has been recognized through several prestigious teaching awards and prizes, including from the Australian government, the university, and the business faculty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please do welcome Dr. Gerhard Hambus that will present his presentations. Well, Dr. Gerhard, the time is yours. Thank you.
Institute, and I hope I can convey some of the spirit of what we do at UTS in Sydney, Australia, and discuss with you important topics that pertain to decision making. And while I see my slides on the screen, are those visible to the on the phone? So thank you for the generous introduction. Would you like me to? Thank you for the warm welcome and the friendly introduction. I hope that I can deliver on the engagement speaker-wise that you introduced me as. What I would like to do with you today is explore something that relates to decision-making in business and actually extends to decision-making beyond business. And I hope that you and I can perhaps have a bit of an experiment today, or maybe a couple of experiments where we go through a couple of situations where we want to find a solution. Maybe I can do this, if you help me. Would you mind that I use the PDF that I had on this one, because it's maybe an old file that you have? So it's not the PowerPoint file, I think. You know, I had on my USB stick. If you have a look, If you look at the stick, apologies for this one. I would like to show this one.
Same. This here file. Same PDF.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So basically, what we're trying to do today is, and I make sure that I'm also I'm thankful for the online audience, of course, that I'm staying in the right spot here. I would like to talk to you about decision making. Allow me to start first by telling you about me. I'm an academic staff in the business school at UTS. My personal mission and vision is to work with future leaders like yourselves, students at the undergraduate and postgraduate level, to foster better outcomes in capital markets. And finance is what I like it as a research topic and as a learning tool. And therefore, I'm in the finance department. What gets me out of bed in the morning? I'm a father of 2 children. My son Benjamin is 2 and my daughter Eva is 7. So since I have them, I'm better off, but certainly I sleep less. And so they get me out of bed in the morning. But more importantly, at university, I like to provide student learning experiences and work with students like yourselves when we engage with students in the classroom. Sydney is a wonderful place because we have students from all over the world, including from Indonesia. And every time we have large rooms of students where we work together on business applications, I feel very privileged in order to learn from my students and to engage in problem solving that extends country boundaries, because we really put to work a global aspect to our work with the students. The schedule is very brief today, only 3 things that we discuss. Hopefully they will enrich and add value to your education or to your thinking. We talk about decision making. We want to look at some extreme cases of decision making, perhaps dangerous situations and how we react them. And then at the end, I would like to shed some light on technology, in particular machine learning and artificial intelligence. And as Thomas earlier said today, we are a decently sized university with 40,000+ students. The business school is the largest faculty, and within business finance is the largest group, the largest department. And as I've told you before, my heart beats for finance, of course. And therefore, everything that I tell you today will be able to be held against me, because I'm showing you the world from my view as a finance academic. And I was interested this morning to learning from Professor Umar that this institute is very much concerned about its lecturers and its educators being savvy at industry knowledge and being practitioners, being applied. And UTS strives for the same values. So we want to make sure that we, the people that work with the students, that we are connected to industry, that we have a good network with industry. And I think CPA Australia demonstrated that the learning continues and extends beyond university. And the wonderful network that I was allowed to visit last night when I tapped into their network is really demonstrating how you can have a lifelong network of 170,000 people on the planet, for example, in the case of CPAA. So I found that was very, very interesting, and perhaps gives you an idea of how you can extend your personal ambitions in the future. What makes the UTS Business School somewhat special is that we are a socially committed business school. That means what we do with students in all of these departments and in all of our degree programs is making sure that students understand that, yes, you will get tools that are important for business decision making, but we want you as future leaders to act as socially committed leaders. What that means is we want you to create innovative and successful businesses, but we would like you to act as responsible business managers and business leaders in the future. And the reason is quite simple. The world faces distinct, very significant problems. And some of these problems are addressed at the global level. And businesses clearly play a critical role in, for example, addressing these problems. And I see a large group of students here in the classroom. Maybe you allow me to ask you, what are the biggest problems in the world that we're facing? For example, in Indonesia, but also in Sydney, in Frankfurt, Germany, where my home country is. What kind of problems do you think is the world currently facing, where business perhaps adds to solving these problems in the future? What do you guys think? And I'm happy for you if you indicate to me by hand. Is anything coming to your mind? Like what are the things that perhaps we need a global solution for in order to save the planet? And I'm sure that perhaps in your classes you pick up on these things, but at UTS, we've picked up on a list of critical global problems that the United Nations, and Indonesia is of course a member of the United Nations since 1950 already. The United Nations as a global body has put out a list of 17 so-called sustainable development goals. And at UTS, we relate to this list of urgent problems to be solved by making these problems part of our education to students. For example, if you look at the first row, The critical problems in the world include, of course, poverty, hunger, quality education, gender equality, but also if you look at the last row on the very left side, climate action. Okay, the planet is currently experiencing significant problems. And so what we believe that perhaps will add value to you when you go through your career, your educational career and later your professional career, by connecting to what the world really needs, successful, responsible leaders that help us all together as a global community to overcome these problems, these very critical problems. So therefore the SDGs are expressed a goal of UTS and its ambitions to serve students. And therefore, I would like to relate to these. Of course, good decision-making relates, as we said, to, or as we will point out today, to bribery and corruption. And for example, corruption in the public sector probably makes attaining these goals much more difficult. And hence, good decision-making at the business and also at the public level will help societies to achieve these critical goals. So I'm inviting you, if you've never looked at the United Nations SDGs, put them on your radar as you go forward through your career, that you have those on your map, because businesses do care about these. And one reason is that businesses need resources, for example, capital. And the global capital regulation and the global frameworks that govern the way we look from the business funding side. Those frameworks require businesses to do well going forward. And this will be increasingly important. I know that CPA Australia, for example, had sustainability reporting as a guest speaking event recently, and that is a finance is an interesting topic because it can help us to understand how we fund assets and what kind of assets we want to put in place, either for personal use or for business use. And so, for example, if you were to buy a phone for yourself, you have to fund this phone with savings or maybe with assistance of family savings. Or if it's a business, you can perhaps buy an overpriced phone from an American provider, and you could put that on the balance sheet and let, for example, your sales force use the phone in order to make business development, right? Or if your mother needs a new car, or if you plan on creating a business that has luxury transportation services, you could buy an expensive German black car and put it on your balance sheet as a means to generate cash flow for the future. Finance will help you to get these decisions right, because obviously you want to put assets to work in order also to make a profit. What I like to point out at UTS when we discuss corporate valuation, for example, and we use the knowledge of accountants, including the knowledge of financial statements, to put this knowledge to work in corporate valuation, I'm trying to challenge students and say, what if we have only one item available that we need to value? Because part of finance is, for example, the valuation of assets, asset valuation. And if we have only one item available, for example, on the left side, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, then this becomes much more difficult. So if I had to ask you, and this is probably a bit of a challenging question, but if you and I wanted to buy the Mona Lisa, which is currently in a museum in France, in Paris, the Musée du Louvre, and the French government, since the late 1700s, is the owner of this painting. But if you and I were to fly to Paris and try to buy this painting from the museum, that means from the French government, how much do you think we would need to put on the table to convince them that we have fair value and we can negotiate? What do you think would be an offer that we could start making for them not to send us home and just to laugh at us? Because of course, respect in business is an important aspect, and that leads to good decision-making too. If we're disrespectful to people, if we lack respect to people and organizations, we may not have business success. So if you had to throw out a number, you can give me any number that comes to your mind in US dollars. How much do you think is the Mona Lisa worth? And I'm happy to perhaps even ask my own folks or the friends from CPA, although they probably were slightly informed last night. But any student can throw me out a number that they think is a reasonable number to start bidding. Any number is a good number. Let's put it in the millions, and you just tell me now how many millions you want to bid for the Mona Lisa. 150 million. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your contribution. First of all, that takes my breath away. That's a lot of money. 150 million US buys a lot of assets, including housing, perhaps real estate that pertains to businesses. So that's really a bold number, and I like that approach. Thank you. So now I'm really have a dilemma. Like, how can I measure? Where's the benchmark for the 150 million now? You know, I could probably buy a lot of real estate here in Indonesia for 150 million, but one painting, and that painting is even super old, right? We're talking 1502 to 1506. Allegedly, it was produced. So here we have now the difficulty of valuing assets. Who has a different number, or tell me at least higher or lower than 150? What do you think is today's value?
It's higher.
Higher, okay. Do you have a number on your mind?
100 million.
How much?
18.
800 million. Wow. So now I'm, first of all, once again, the number takes my breath away, but I'm sensing that I'm facing a really, really smart group here. The question is, and in fact, actually, with your guests, you're very close, perhaps, to what is discussed on the internet, what the value of this painting is. But the problem is, how can we value this if the supply curve, all of you engage in economics in your training, is inelastic? It's just a one unit supply of a good that basically can face any demand, right? And the painting itself is not a cash flow producing asset, unlike a business. If I put it down here on the ground, all of us can stare at it, but there's no cash flow coming out of it. Perhaps from a museum, there's cash flow, I agree with that. So your number is a very clever number. And your number is also a clever number, and they pertain to probably different times in history. In 1962, an insurance company insured the Mona Lisa for 100 million US. And in recent times, people have to try to make an inference from that number, the old number, by moving cash flows into the future using present value, the present value of money. And they came up with a number that is close to 870 billion US. So your bid is so close that I want to talk to you if you have any stock tips for me, but I'll talk to you after. It seems like you have a lot of knowledge. Thank you. Of course, in finance, we're worried about businesses and valuing businesses, and that is everyday bread and butter work for example, people that assist with accounting in order to get corporate valuations right. And next time you go to your hairdresser or you go to your favorite little food shop, not only ask for the service or the food that you're buying, ask them, if I want to buy your business, how much? It is a bit of a direct question, and maybe that's too German then to ask. But I'm encouraging you to do so, to learn from a business owner, from an entrepreneur, how they think their business is valued. Often they use financial performance measures to do so. For example, they use sales or EBITDA and give you a certain multiplier, and that's what they claim is the value of the business. So in Sydney, I went to my hairdresser, and he has less and less to do. As you can see, I'm losing my hair, and that's good for him and bad for me. But what is wonderful is I asked him, can you sell me your shop? And he said, you're not serious, aren't you? And I said, I'm not buying your shop, but I want to know from you how much you want to have for this shop if someone makes a serious offer. And in this case, he said maybe 2 times annual sales. So he used sales as a performance measure, which we study and work with in finance and applications, to come up with a business value. So what I'm trying to tell you is, when you go through your studies, often you have people that give you books, articles, and good concepts and knowledge. But put that to work by asking really interesting questions, by moving through the world. Ask a hairdresser, ask a food supplier, or discuss with friends that own businesses what they think the value of their business is. And most importantly, be hungry for knowledge. Ask why. Because that way you can learn, for example, how in Indonesia people value different businesses. I find that very intriguing, but maybe that's also just me, like in finance for so many years now. What I want to talk to you today is, and thank you in particular also for those that join us online, is how can we take good decisions? And a key aspect of good decision making is that we act on reason, that we have a proper reason why we do something. For example, an option to take a business decision or to take the decision to study overseas. And when we make decision, for example, at a national level, it's good to know what do we want to achieve. And often nations have aspired to do what the left side of this slide shows, and I'm not showing you the details, but it's basically the production of goods and services of the citizens of a country called GDP. And many nations aspire to create wealth for their citizens, to be the best, the world champions at producing goods and services. And that has been a traditional way of looking at this world, a very economic way of looking at this world. But if I ask you, when you wake up in the morning, and today is Friday, not sure what you're doing tomorrow, but at least in Sydney, sometimes we're very happy it's Friday. So we have a day off tomorrow, and we can maybe spend time with friends and family. We look so much forward to that, not only because we're not working, but we're spending time with the ones we really care about. At least I care a lot about my family, my wife, my children, my family at home in Germany. And therefore, I'm valuing this much more than maybe profits or my retirement savings on a Saturday morning. I'm not saying the other ones are not important, but the ability to really focus on what's important in life, to me, sometimes I need that. I need to sit down and remind myself that it's so wonderful to have a family, as opposed to striving from Monday through Friday to make an income. And so some countries could choose, as on the right side of the slide here, to choose to use something else as the goal. Maybe happiness of people is very important. If you have a happy life, you have a good life, right? If you have an unhappy life, probably life is very miserable and takes a lot of effort to go through. So what I'm trying to tell you is, when you run businesses or when you aspire to be managers or analysts in businesses, perhaps have on the radar, similar to the big problems of the world that you're solving, that it's very important to make not only yourself happy, but also the people around you. And that extends then to the society outside of the window. In other words, if you're happy and you make, and that sounds a bit trivial, but if you behave well to your environment, to your stakeholders, and they are content with what you do and it relates to a good relation, then perhaps you did right for the business, for yourself, and for the community. And that is something very powerful. And I want to make sure that we have that on the radar when we talk about some decisions. So this slide just shows on the top of the triangle, yes, we want to make profit. And you learn that in economics and other business disciplines, that you run businesses not only for the sake of it, or the sake of them, but you want to make profits. The lower left side of the triangle says we must act within the parameters of the law. If you act against the law, and of course, corruption and bribery would be against such topics, like not within the realm of the law, then you risk of going to prison. Certainly you risk your good reputation, your personal brand, and your standing in society, and also standing within your personal environments. And this year, the ethics and morality, that's kind of what I want today to put a very big emphasis on. The soft spot of decision-making that often is forgotten, in particular when we go through very strict university trainings where we optimize and we get good outcomes, maybe for the owners of a business. But it's very important to not forget that there's an aspect of decision-making within us and within those that we negotiate with or that we deal with that is not rational and not driven by law. It's perhaps something that pertains to good behavior. And we call, or I label it morality as the existence of certain rules in one part of the world. And if you analyze these rules, we talk about ethics. So ethics is the study of morality, and morality is this phenomenon that you step into a new world, like for me, Indonesia, and I'm sensing how you guys operate here, what kind of respect you show to each other, how friendly you are, how welcoming you are. And therefore, in particular in international business, this lower right side of the triangle is critically important not to get wrong. If you come out of the plane and you behave wrong, for example, a German misbehaving in Indonesia, then not only do you go back quickly to your home country, but you don't have success here in engaging and networking with people. This relates to fairness. I don't want to go further into that, but imagine you have a job to do and someone pays you maybe $1,000 to create an output, a report. And you and your friend work equally hard on this report, but your friend pockets $950 and pays you $50. That perhaps with some of you doesn't sit right because it's unfair. And this unfairness may lead you to refuse opportunities. And the other side will quickly learn that you're not just their workhorse. You want to be fairly treated if you're equal partners in a business transaction, for example. So this relates to respect. And I tried to emphasize it when I talked to CPA last night. It's not only important to understand myself, but the emotional intelligence that you develop when making business and understanding others. This will help you then to assess, did I treat you unfairly? And if you did, maybe coincidentally, you have a chance to rectify this. And you say, please accept my apologies. It was not my intention to step on your toes, but it's important that we both understand that this is meant to be a mutually successful transaction. So we talked about ethics and morality. I told you morality is kind of the existence of rules in society, where ethics is the study of this. So what does good decision-making mean? It really means that on the way through not only our university studies, but also on the way, or while walking through our career, our professional life, it's almost like walking on a wire. This photo is from a Hollywood movie called Man on the Wire, and it shows Philippe Petit, a Frenchman in 1974, who put a wire between the World Trade Center in New York City, the two towers that don't exist anymore, and he walked on a wire with his balancing stick between these buildings. And sometimes I tell students, you have to be careful when you do first steps in your careers, when you're inexperienced, and certainly also when you move on into middle career and senior positions, that you walk slowly that wire of your career, of your goals, attainment of your goals. Because if you use your education and your experience in the wrong way, you risk falling off that wire. And please do not put wires between your wonderful buildings I see outside here. This was an illegal action. And I'm just telling you, I'm comparing it to decision-making. Okay. He also did the same in Sydney the year before in 1973 and put a wire onto the Harbour Bridge. So in case you come to Sydney, not only I hope you will knock on my door in the business school and identify yourself and say, hey, we once met you and now we're here. But most importantly, I would like to show you maybe the Harbour Bridge and a scene here where once again the guy is on the wire. Decision-making is something that relates to situations and optimizations, but sometimes becomes a lifelong opportunity or a burden. If you do wrong once in your group of friends here by maybe cheating in an exam, cheating in a homework assignment, just to relate to your student life, then this may make the rounds. People know that you're not earning honestly, and I'm not saying you would do that. In the world, I've taught in America and in Australia, and also gave guest lectures elsewhere. Probably I've seen that elsewhere in the world, not here. But if you have a friend that cheats in achieving academic success, this friend probably gets a bad name very quickly. And worse, if someone blows the whistle, that student gets in severe trouble within the organization. So what I'm trying to tell you is I have nothing against tattoos, but be aware that bad decision-making can be sticky to you. People may judge you years after for something you did years before. And while Jakarta is a very, very big city, perhaps the accounting or finance profession is a profession where people know each other. It's a network of professionals. So if you step into that world and you misbehave, there's a risk of you branding yourself in the biggest city in your country as being a person that nobody wants to work with, or that is hard to be recommended by others. So I would like now to work with you on developing a defensible solution. And to do so, this is one step of good decision-making. We need to really look at what is the mechanism of how we operate when we make decisions. And this is probably too much information on one slide, but allow me to simplify and summarize it. On the left side, you see what we call utilitarianism, which is an approach of decision-making where you look for alternatives. You see it there, the process, different alternatives, for example, choosing an overseas university for your career development, where you then look at the consequences, for example, the expected salary, the lifestyle you will be getting, maybe opportunities for companies or industries, and then which one is the greatest benefit for you? Where are you the happiest and where can you make the most money? Could be two aspects that drive your decision making. And ultimately, you create an Excel sheet similar to a balance sheet, and you put the goods and the bads next to each other, and you choose the city, for example, Sydney, and you choose a university, for example, UTS, because it gives you the best outcome for yourself. That's a very technical, very mechanical way of making decisions, right? You take an Excel sheet and you count basically goods and bads, and you come up with the best solution. That's one way of thinking. And then there's the other way of thinking that's on the right side of the slide here, which is more something that pertains to principles that you were given, maybe when you were growing up. I do remember my father and mother telling me that I probably should not lie to people, and certainly I must not kill anything that's human or non-human on the planet, because it's not right to start with, and certainly it's illegal and gets you in lots of troubles. So this is what we call Kantian ethics, and I'm only showing you two ways of how we explain decision-making, but I want to now work with you on a simple example to see if you use one or the other one, or maybe both together, okay? So allow me to work with you, and then we hopefully get to a good example. I'm skipping this slide. It's an old movie, and it's so old that it's probably boring for you, but sometimes I use it. Decision-making, before we get to the example, is not only driven by generally the mechanics that we explore now in our brains, in our heads, but also by biases. So sometimes we're walking towards a business decision and making a goal, and then there's some sort of influence on us. For example, greed that is expressed in conflicts of interest. Imagine you're a financial professional and you're consulting an older couple, a very wealthy couple, and you tell them to buy certain stocks into their portfolio. And the stock is way too risky and not optimal for what they're looking for. They're looking for safety, ongoing cash flow, certainly no variance when it comes to asset development. So it could be that you're making a lot of money by selling these stocks to them, but you didn't do what is good for them, what is in their best interest. And in such case, you will be suffering from a conflict of interest, which we show you in the middle. There's lots of biases. I like to describe them as winds on the way to decision-making. So if I want to go straight to goal and I want to be a good business person achieving goals, it could be that I'm blown away by a wind. And the wind is perhaps the greed to make me rich at a quick moment in time. But if my employer or if the market knows that I'm doing this, I'm out of business. I cannot go in further details here, but I want to show you there's plenty of behavioral biases that sometimes challenge us. In Australia, we have disasters, and I'll come to the extremes of decision-making. In Australia, we have disasters like bushfires away from the cities. And you know, Australia is a very big country. When these occur, some people say only then when you have a disaster, an emergency situation, then ethics kick in. And I would like to challenge that. Some of you can perhaps relate to that. Imagine an accident situation, or like here, a firefighter that has to choose to either save his brother's house or any house that is just a neighbor's house. And maybe the firefighter saves the brother's house first, but that wasn't the one that was first in his way. Conflict of interest, right? So I want to challenge you if you agree to that. So we're playing a little game here, and the game is easy because I'm not teaching chemistry. Chemistry, I would give you goggles, plastic goggles, and we would light something on fire, and we would see smoke and have a good outcome. That's my simple way of explaining science. But we want to do an experiment here in the classroom, and also my friends online. I'm inviting you to contribute, and if you like, put in the chat some answers, so that we can see what you think. I want to ask you two different questions based on this example, and I hope that you can perhaps work with me. Otherwise, maybe just by means of hand sign, tell me what you would do. So the situation is as follows. We have basically a situation where a train runs on a train track, and the train would now kill within 1 or 2 seconds 5 people that are unfortunately on the tracks. Could be a family on a Sunday afternoon, and they were misled to be on the train tracks, but the disaster is about to occur. You are now the decision maker, and that's you here, this person, and you have the ability within that split second. It's really just a very quick decision that you have to make. An emergency situation, an extreme situation. You can take that switch and you can flip it, which then makes the train being diverted, go on the upper track, and only kill 1 person. Perhaps it's a worker that was doing some work on the train tracks, and therefore you would then, with this flipping the switch, you would deviate the train, save the family of 5, and only kill 1 person. Both outcomes are bad outcomes, and you can relate to that in business. For example, closing 1 of 2 factories. People lose their work, people lose their living. Both are bad outcomes. But sometimes certain decisions have to be made by putting you now basically in the driver's seat of this decision. So I'm interested. Would you flip that switch? You have only 1 second. I cannot give you more information because it's all so fast and so dramatic. Can you tell me, if you think about it, you have to be a bit following maybe your, what we call it sometimes your guts, your instincts. What would you do? Maybe I can ask by means of hand sign. If you were to flip the switch, which means that you save a family of 5, father, mother, and 3 children. On the other side, though, another person is killed. And you guys have trains in Indonesia, don't you? You know what a big train looks like? And a big train running over a person or running over 5 people is no pretty, okay? I'm not going into details, but it's a Hollywood scene that none of us wants to see, okay? So I'm trying to make you uncomfortable. It needs to go under your skin a bit. Would you, who would flip that switch to save 5 and basically then have an outcome that only 1 person is? So I have 1 hand, thank you, ma'am, I take that. Who else would follow your fellow colleague here by saving 5 and choosing the life of 1? And everybody, including the senior management, is invited, and the vice dean to give me an idea. Thank you, sir. Also flip the switch, right? And I may start with the lady over here. Can you explain to me why you would do this? Why would you flip the switch? And I will repeat your answer that makes it easy.
I think you see from the number that see, I think we try to saving the big number and that is that 1 people.
Wonderful. So I repeat your answer. You said, if I have the choice, probably I want to save the big number of human life.
I think we can use this one, so I'm going to give it to the audience.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, sure. So I'm going to go back to this. This works too. Wonderful. So so the answer was that it would be better to save 5 as opposed to 1 because that is a better outcome. You said, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Would you mind sharing the mic with the gentleman that also said, there's a gentleman that also said yes? I'm interested in their view. And those others that are agreeing with the lady that just spoke, I'm interested in to see more hands. Why would you do the same?
Well, for me, while having 1, it is it's better to save more people than 1. And if in the real that the train is still in like still long from getting hit by the train,
yeah,
I will pull the lever to make it easy for me to save the 1 people than 5 people.
Wonderful. So thank you very much for your contribution. May I ask, we have 2 students that I'm thankful for working with me. Who else would agree with them that they would flip the switch? And I'm not asking you to now speak up. just as a sign, how many people would flip that switch? I will not ask you to speak up. Seems like there's only few, but maybe it's just a bit difficult on a Friday morning to quickly put your hand up. And that's okay, I respect that. But I think the two of you for having worked with me, so we have at least 2 students that would do this. Who would not do this? Now I have to still ask, maybe someone else is working with me. And I'm not going to ask you to explain it if you don't want to, but just by means of hand, who would not flip the switch, who would step back and look at the train running over the family. And I'm not explaining what that happens, but it's not pretty, okay? Who else, who would do nothing? And once again, I respect that it's Friday morning and we're all getting together here, but usually when I do this in large groups in Sydney, where we sometimes also use mobile phones, so I don't have to ask you with a microphone to respond, we get typically the answers that 80% of people are doing what the 2 friends have expressed. They would do what we just explained. That means save 5 and sacrifice the 1. Both outcomes are bad outcomes, but 1 person dead is a disaster times 1. 5 people dead is a disaster times 5. And hence people are typically inclined to do this, flipping the switch, similar to what you expressed. On the previous slide, to compare 1 and 5 was on the left side, right? Utilitarianism, the Excel sheet, right? You did an Excel sheet and you compared 2 numbers, 1 and 5. So I think what I just discovered with my 2 friends here is, at least for this problem, you employed that kind of thinking, that you said a family of 5 is probably more important than just 1 person. Let me change the game just a tiny bit. Last question for today, and then you don't have to work with me anymore if you don't like. This question changes a bit. We don't have a switch anymore. What we now have is just a bridge, and you are once again the person that has to make a decision. And in this case, the only thing you have in front of you is a man. And this man, again, the train comes, the train goes through the bridge here, and the man will throw, excuse me, you will be able now to do 2 things. Either both of you just stand there and watch the train going over 5 people, okay, not a pretty thing to look at, or you use either your shoe leather or your hand by kicking this man off the bridge, which then results in the man falling down, the train hits it, also hits the brakes, and only killing 1 man and saving the family. The train just stops before the family and pushes the dead man just before the family. I'm making it more dramatic than I should. So my question to you is, would you still do what you said earlier? That means intervene and throw this man off the bridge or not? And I'm very interested in my 2 students that worked with me earlier, and in particular, I start with the ladies first, if you like.
I think it's different from before, because this one is 2 people.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a microphone that our online friends can also.
And there's panels there. I think that 2 people can save this 5. These 5 like a group of family from the train.
So now what I'm hearing from you is you would change your mind. You would not do this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that you were very good at being quick, and you're very determined. So I like that in people that want to go, for example, work in business, because it seems like you're confident. Okay. I like that a lot, but that's probably because I'm German.
Oh, thank you.
So allow me to ask the other student, if you want more time work with me, would you do the same? That means saving 1, or would you do the same as a lady and save the lives?
Well, for me, I will not try to push the big family. I will just run to the family and save them. However I can. That's the choice I can choose.
So I like your answer for 2 reasons. 1, you show me innovation. You're trying to come up with a new solution. Quickly save the family, and innovation is critically important in business. But sadly, our experiment is only allows for two options. So, and you gave me your answer. You said, I still will do it. I'm going to push that man over the bridge. It could be a German lecturer, that's coincidentally on the bridge. And that German lecturer will save the family of 5 on the track. So we have 2 different answers here. And I think what I want to showcase here is, and the others probably, you'll probably have an answer that you made while we were working on this. What I find is interesting is, if this is a business decision, even though I used killing people just as a straw man, as an example, you guys are my consultants. I'm paying you a lot of money in my company, and I'm the company leader, okay? And I'm coming into my director room and I say, guys, help me out. We have a problem. Close factory 1 or close factory 2 means kill 1, kill 5, okay? And what you can deliver to me is a big debate, which we did. And ultimately, I have 2 consultants that represent group 1 and 2. And one says, I do, in one example, I do yes, I save 5. And in the other example, I don't save 5. And I'm saying, consultant, you leave me hanging. I need a good answer, okay? By contrast, my friend over here, the gentleman, he was more on the Excel sheet side all the time. He said, I'll do it no matter what. I say 5 and I'm constant there. But what that illustrates to you is that decision-making, depending on who we talk to, and I don't know you as friends or how you operate in your university career, but I think the lesson from this is when you work with people, some people say, when I have blood on my hands, my principles come back. I'm not doing Excel sheet, left-hand side of my previous slide. I'm going to the principles that my family taught me. I'm not killing. By contrast, I ask you to execute a task and you are still going for gold, like maybe a good investment banker would do, profit, and that's it, So what I'm trying to tell you is being aware of your own decision-making in this sense, but more importantly, understanding that others may face bipolar different decisions to questions I'm asking is a very important task. If I make business with you, I didn't know how you would operate in the first place. I need to anticipate that you may or may not change your mind depending on the circumstances. When I do business with you, I probably don't know that you're very clear cut. It doesn't matter how much blood I put on your hands, you're up for it, okay? I'm exaggerating. So I'm encouraging you when you look at, in particular, your training when it comes to negotiation or also the evaluation of wrongdoing. We talked about corruption and bribery, or we pertain to that, that you understand the motivators, the drivers for those decision-making. We talked about greed and conflicts of interest, but most importantly, also try to anticipate that you could get as a response 2 different directions of answers. And that makes it very challenging, but makes you a better person when it comes to negotiating or achieving success in business or in personal life, okay? And these examples to me are interesting because I don't know both of you at all, but I got really different answers. And when I do it with large groups from all over the world in Sydney, I typically get what you said in the first place. We get 80% say yes to the flip the switch. And when I say, would you mind putting a bit of blood on your hands? I get the opposite direction, similar to what you showed today, right? So while this is a very simple example, I'm giving you homework. Oh dear, the guy from overseas gives us homework. What I want you to do is take this story to your friends and to your family and just discuss with them what they would do. Many people don't know this example. It's just interesting to sense where principles come back. For example, respect for people or universalizability is an example where we do as good that it could be universal law at any time in the day or in the year. And therefore we can better understand each other and discuss these examples. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I had a group from Kenya and South America in Sydney, and they kept talking about this for 2 nights over dinner. I didn't mean to ruin 2 nights of dinner, but it can stimulate a good discussion between, for example, people that are interested in business. Okay, I'm probably out of time, long over time, so I'm going to wrap this up. I apologize that I wasn't able to illustrate to you the challenges of machines, in particular that machines learn from our behavior, and when we have bad behavior and we give that bad behavior to the machine does wrong decision making. And as I'm out of time, I cannot explain that further, but imagine someone doesn't like Germans and discriminates against me. And if that someone provides the data to a machine that serves people from all over the world, maybe a German like me gets discriminated against. And so we have to be very careful when designing and developing and delivering these machines, smart machines, that we're not using faults from human behavior and let the machine exhibit the same faults. So forgive me for having spent more time in the first time of this presentation. But once again, I'm thankful for being a guest in your country. I'm overwhelmed with friendliness and welcoming behavior here of people in Indonesia. And I thank the senior management and CPA Australia, and in particular, the students for working with me. So once again, thank you for having me today. Thank you.
Well, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Gerhard, for your presentations about the way how we can make a very right decision making. You mentioned about when we would like to make a decision, so we've got to consider about the consequences. And there are 3 approaches that we need to consider as well, such as the law, the economics, and then also the ethics, that it will represent our result of decision making. And then you also give some illustration on how to give a very decision making by having two hypotheses that you have already presented. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a very big applause to Mr. Gerhard. Okay, you may have a seat, sir. You may have a seat. Yes, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to the next. You can come forward. No, here, inside, in the middle with the seats. That's fine. Yeah, sitting there. Yeah. All right, then. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to listen to the next speakers that will be Professor Haryono Umar. Before we start with his presentation, please allow me to read his CV first, okay? Professor Dr. Haryono Umar, okay, was born in Prabumuli in South Sumatra, and he is the Dean of Graduate School Program Perbanas, and then he is also the Director of Anti-Fraud Institution, and then the Vice Chief of KPK, and there are many, okay, of her responsibilities prior to the Dean of Perbanas Institute. Professor Haryono will present his presentation about ethical decision-making process with no fraud. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Professor Dr. Haryono Umar. Professor Dr. Haryono Umar, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Opal. Thank you very much for letting me to present my on the screen, and also I would like to thank you to the CP Australia, Bapak Putra Idealis and Miss Sylvie, and also to the UTS, Professor Thomas, and also Professor Gerhard, and also all of the audiences, and also the Vice Rector of the Perbanas Institute, Dr. Arya. Thank you very much for let me present in this very valuable moment. Okay, and I would like to say that the title of my presentation right now is the ethical decision-making process. Means no fraud. There are two types of the decision-making process. I call it, this one is the MP decision-making process. Actually, there are two types of the decision-making process. The first one, we call it, whenever the decision-making process, we call is the emotional decision-making process. It means some people say this one is intuition, the MP, or you don't need to to have any information in order to do the decision-making process. Means no information. And the second one is, we call it the rational DNP, the decision-making process. It means I call this one is ethical decision-making process, ethical DNP. For the ethical decision-making process, you need information. Romney said that information can alter the opinion of the user. So whenever there's no information support your decision-making process, we call this one is the people who did the decision-making process without any information. So they face I call this one is information asymmetry. Okay. Whenever you face the information asymmetry, there will be two problems here. The first one, I call this one is the adverse selection problem. Adverse selection problem. Or in bahasa, we call this one is salah pengambil keputusan. And the second one is the moral hazard. Because right now we're facing is very rapid changes in the world, that the condition, the environment, and etc. According to the Emery entries in 1965, he said that there are four organization environment. The first one is the very simple one, is we call it the placid cluster environment. So it means the resources, the goals, and the values distributed randomly. So any organization can survive without any innovation, without any creativity, because any organization can collect, can get the resources without any problem. Okay, and the second one is we call it this placid cluster environment. Placid cluster environment. It means this one is semi-conflict environment. So the values, the resources, and also the information, unchanges, but stay in a cluster. If you need to get the resources, if you need the information, if you need the goals, if you need the values, you have to be entered to the cluster. And the third one, we call it disturbed reactive environment. This is in a very conflict situation, in a very complex society, is only in one environment. We call it discard. So during this disturbed reactive environment, there are some, we call it the the sizes matter. The bigger organization, the bigger opportunity to be survived. And the fourth one, we call it the turbulence. Anybody can say that the turbulence mean, the turbulent environment is this is not chaos. This is only we call it dynamic situation. In this dynamic situation, is very, because the change is very rapid. So at a time you need to adapt to the environment. But because of the changes in over and over again, so it makes some organization, it makes some people, getting tired to adaptive. Whenever they come to this condition, getting tired for the adaptive, there will be, we call it maladaptive, and because of that, there is the fifth environment, according to the Boboroghlu 1998, we call it the vertical environment, from the vortex. In this condition, in this vertical environment, not only people, not only organization, but also everything bigger, everything organization, and also even the one country can be, collapse at a time. So that's why this is become make people, everything, especially in the future, everything's unpredictability, the existence, and etc. Sometimes call this one is VUCA. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In this condition, of course, every organization, every people think and try to be survived, or we call it sustainability. But some organization not try to work hard, not to try to do the best, but some bad habit, we call it will create the bad governance, something like that. In this condition, some conflict of interest and etc. It will create what we call it a fraud, fraud. Actually, there are three elements of the fraud. The first one is we call it conversion. Conversion. This means every crime is over here, including the cheating, including manipulation, including the everything, corruption and etc. etc. And the second one is called the concealment. Because of the the fraud, the crime, the fraud is crime. Because there one element of the fraud activity is we call it it derives by the evil intention. In the Dutch we call it the mens rea. In Bahasa we call it niat jahat. Okay, and the third one is of course the theft. So because of the fraud, is not common crime. I call the fraud is the financial crime. It means sometimes the people call it, this one is white collar crime, and there are three types of the fraud. The first one we call it the fraudulent financial reporting, and the second one is we call it asset misappropriation, and the third one is the corruption. Later, whenever especially in Indonesia, whenever the fraud, happen with the government fund, we don't say that fraudulent financial statement. There's no, word of the fraudulent financial statement or fraudulent financial reporting or asset misappropriation. Everything, every kind of the fraud, whenever it's happened with the financial, with the government finance or government fund, we call this one is the corruption. So whenever it's happened in government or even the state own enterprises, something like that, and also the local government, central government, there is only one word, we call it the corruption. According to the law number 31, year to 1999, and the law number 20, year 2001. Okay. So what are the corruption? There are how many types of the corruption? According to the law number 31, year 1998, 1999, and also the law number 20, year 2001, there are 30 types of the corruption. The first one is a very, very famous one. Is the we call it it will cause the government loss, government money loss, and also the briberies. This one, bribery, and also the this one is extortion and the gratitude. Okay, from this 30 type of the corruption, I make a cluster into two clusters, two categories of the corruption. The first one, there's a very famous one that almost more than 70% of the corruption happening in Indonesia is this one, related to the government loss, government money, government fund. Okay, the first one is relating to the sentence number 2, article number 2 of the law number 31, year 1999, and also the article number 3 of the laws. Also death penalty is over here for the article number 2, especially point point 1 of the article number 2, there are the rules about the death penalty. But so far, until now, there's no indictment for this death penalty. Or we can say that most of the corruption cases happen in Indonesia. The sanction, there are two types of the sanction. The first one is sanction relating to the sentence to the jail, and the second sentence is relating to the money. According to the law, maximum sentence to jail is 20 years, or death penalty, or something else, But so far, the indictment and also the sentence from the judge not offer than 20 years, but also only maybe some cases relating on only 3 years, etc., etc. And also the about the money that have to pay back by the corruptors, even though the government lost it around 2.3 trillion rupiah, trillion rupiah, 2,3 triliun rupiah. But according to the judge, according to the sentence of the judge, the corruptor have to pay back. It's maybe only 10 billion rupiah. You can imagine, from the government loss of 2.3 trillion rupiah, they have to pay only 10 billion rupiah. How come? So I think for this, especially for this type of the corruption, I think it's almost impossible for the Indonesia to diminish any corruption cases, because of the sanction is too friendly to the corruptor. Okay, and the second type of the corruption is relating to the first one is we call it bribery. So far bribery in Indonesia, there are 791 cases relating to the bribery, okay, and 284 relating to the procurement in government activities. Okay, I will back to this one. So we call in bahasa de suap. In English we call it bribery. Bribery is mean whenever as a government official, you receive something in order to do something or not to do something. You receive something, it means you receive money. Okay. Also, you receive goods. It could be apartment. It could be cars. Very luxury goods. And also, whenever you have already received or agree with the promises, janji. Okay. So whenever you agree that somebody will give you any money, any goods at the time, even though the money is not you receive yet, but maybe in the future we call it the what is in accrual basis in accounting. At that time you have already according to the law you have already received the bribery. It's already criminal activities. Okay, so the law enforcement agencies, law enforcement official is not allowed to prevent to stop that kind of the crime anymore. Okay, and the second one is we call it the extortion or pemerasan in bahasa. Extortion is mean the government employees, government official, senior government official. It could be the the bupati, major, governor, minister, government members, parliament members and etc. etc. Whenever they said, okay, I will do this one, or unless you have to give me any money, any goods, and anything, unless I will not agree with your proposal, something like that. This we call it the extortion or pemerasa. There are so many cases relating to the pemerasa. Okay, the third one.
Yeah, okay, the last one, yeah, Prof, because the time
Okay.
is almost there.
The last one is gratitude. I will let you know about the causes of the fraud, the causes of the corruption. In 1953, Donald Tracy said that there are three causes of the corruption that they call it the fraud triangle. This one: opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. And in 2004, Hermanson and Wolpe said that not only the three one should be there is one more thing that so become four. Then they call it the fraud diamond, and this is the fourth one, capability. And in 2016, Haryono Umar, HU, said that especially Indonesia, there would be the fifth one that we call it lack of integrity. So it become the fraudster, this one. And for because corruption is very difficult to detect, so that's one. Almost all of the auditor in the world, not only in Indonesia, cannot detect any corruption. For instance, for the cases of the British Telecom in Italy, the PricewaterhouseCoopers couldn't find any corruption, couldn't find any fraud, but they always, deliver the unqualified opinion. But the fact there are so big corruption, big fraud over there, it's because they don't have any tools to detect. So in 2020 until now, 2020, HU, develop, we call it the HU model for detecting the corruption. And this year, 2022, for detecting the corruption, we have already, create the, we call it the application, web-based, application for detecting the corruption. We call it the HU model. I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Ms. Opal. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, okay, thank you let's give a very big applause to Professor Haryono Umar. Okay, it was very beautiful presentation of Professor Haryono Umar. For having a decision-making process, we need to also consider about the emotional, rational, and also the uncertainty that we need to face. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to open a discussion. There will be 6 prizes, okay, for those ask questions, okay. So feel free, if you have any question, you can ask to Mr. Gerhard and also Professor Haryono Umar. Professor Haryono Umar will be with us in this classroom as well, okay? So if you've got any question, please raise your hand then. Any question from the classroom or from the Zoom? Yes?
Ms. Opal, Ms. Opal, for the base question, I will, give these books to the question. There are 2 books that I will deliver. The first one is the Corruption, the Devil, and the second one is the Detecting Corruption. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Haryono. So
okay,
there will be 3 books given by Mr. Haryono, okay, for the questions. Okay, is there any question from the floor? Yes, okay, sir.
Okay, first of all, I need to know the point of view from Dr. Hambush and Prof. Umar. I want to know how do we solve.
What's your name?
My name is Reggie.
Okay.
Right. All right. I want to know how do we solve the paradox in the corruption, like from the mentally inside my mind, the corruption causes it's only from two causes. First, environmentally or principle, or two, from the environmental work. In the field, we often found the case that if I am a honest person, I want to do a honest work too. But if my environmental is bad, I cannot do survive in the environmental, because consider that hero is always walk alone. And how do we how do we start it? Is that from mentally or the environment? It's just like egg first or the chicken first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reggie. Yes. Okay. Are we going to wait for another question, or do you want to answer the question?
I'm happy to start, but I also would let Professor Umar go first if he prefers.
All right then. Okay. Yes, Professor Hari Umar, if you want to address the answers.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Opal and Randy. I think it's a very good question. And actually, as I mentioned before about the causes of the corruption, there are 5 causes of the corruption. The fifth one is especially happening in Indonesia. We call it the lack of integrity. According to my research, the integrity is very, the first rank of the causes of the corruption in Indonesia. For instance, there are some cases, the ketua DPD, a very high, very elite government official in Indonesia, RI9, RI9, and number 9 of the Indonesia. Okay, he's very rich, he's very famous, a lot of in net worth, something like that. But how come he, agree to receive only 100 million rupiahs? It's a small amount of money, It's because, I can say this one. Every time, almost of the problem in organization is cause of the conflict of interest. The conflict of interest, it will create the loss of integrity. If you face the conflict of interest, you will become, I don't want to say it. I want to say it in Indonesia, okay? BBT, bodoh, buta, and tuli, or in for the teenager, we call it bucin, So you don't know whether is it right, whether is it allowed, or is it ethical or anything. So that's why in order to diminish any corruption, not only for the government activities but also for the commercial activities, you have to create you have to prevent from the conflict of interest. Whenever you face any ethical or conflict of interest, you have to declare. You have to declare about that. For instance, the auditor of BPK that received money 1.9 billion rupiahs from the Bupati of the Bogor, it's because of the conflict of interest. So one more time, for you, especially for the student, your interest is only one: to study, to improve your knowledge, improve your attitude, improve your character, in order to increasing, I call it, exponential growth. I think that's all, Ms. Opal.
All right, thank you, Professor Haryono Umar. Okay, probably there is an additional answers from Mr. Dr. Gerhard.
Thank you, and thank you to Professor Umar for guiding your answer to start with. That for me, and I much enjoyed Professor Umar's presentation for many reasons. In his answer to you, he highlighted conflict of interest as one of the key drivers of what would lead perhaps to bad outcomes, which are, for example, bribery and corruption. Generally speaking, one would perhaps argue, and Professor Umar's presentation showed us a lot of drivers and also the rationalizations on the right-hand side of the star. People within that live in a system that has problems, perhaps feel not in the right position to overcome systemic problems. Because if everybody does it, perhaps you should do it too, right? You expressed to me that if corruption and bribery is around you, and you're trying to be an honest person, but if you do differently, be unethical, then you have better outcomes for yourself, then of course there's a pressure that puts you into the bad position, perhaps into agreeing to corruption or bribery. So what I'm trying to tell you is, generally speaking, as an individual, ethics is not debatable, right? If you come home to your mother and dad, you know what's the right thing for them, you know what the right thing they taught you, and in your own house, you would never be corrupt towards your own family members, for example, for them to suffer from bad outcomes. It is interesting when we step out of the house into a public scenery or into a business setting, that we can change our standards, our benchmark, right? And that's probably what some people do that engage in corruption and bribery. They now have a different standard. Now it's okay to let ethics behind or good behavior behind. And Professor Umar explained nicely on his first slide where he drew us, the rational way of looking at decision-making in ethics with the economic drivers of moral hazard and adverse selection, which are based on information that is different. If you don't know that I'm going to defraud you, that I'm going to do bad to you, then I perhaps can get away with it because I will do something that is the undetected bribery and corruption. So to answer your question, usually I would say between you and I, ethics is not debatable, never. If a system provides the environment where you can get away with it, and that was on the right-hand side of the star, the dangerous rationalizations, it's a famous Harvard Business Review article from the 80s. Basically, you can talk yourself into a rationale that makes it right. Wrong becomes right, white becomes black, which is completely irrational, but it's a process of us trying to accommodate perhaps the situation by making ourselves better off. And so what I'm leaving with you is the following: knowing that ethics is not debatable, and knowing that the pressure of the system may be so large that it feels like as a person you cannot provide a meaningful force against this pressure to make it right, you need support. And similar to our big problems that I showed you on the United Nations slide, bribery and corruption needs the support of, for example, governments or the law in order to respond to wrongdoings properly. And Professor Umar told us that the carrot and the stick problem is not properly solved because the carrot is so big that I'm willing to engage in bad behavior, and the stick is so little that it is still meaningful to do wrong because the slap you get on your hands is not that bad, and the carrot you can take home if nobody detects you is very big. So I think what the answer to your problem is that you as business leaders and you being part of a system, including, for example, the legal profession, and of course, overall, the people of a nation, one needs to put force to place that, for example, the law, but also businesses behave better, because obviously public sector is different than private sector, but businesses perhaps suffered by responding to public sector wrongdoing in an unethical way. And in a business sense, that can be achieved, for example, by our friends from CPAA, because the CPAA, like many other professional designations, they have standards of professional conduct. And if you, like 170,000 other members, become a member, for example, of CPAA or another professional body, then you have another commitment that you need to adhere to. And for example, being a member and meeting your friends like I did last night for a networking event to foster your career, to be a good, valuable member of the professional community, that makes you becoming part of a community and you listen to what perhaps is good behavior in that community. And so what I'm saying is one can address the problem at the highest level, the systemic level, with government and other intervention. And of course, also bottom up from the industry with engaging with the right people that have the right plan to make the business world, for example, the right space to operate in, and also to look down upon wrongdoing. So when it becomes embarrassing to do wrong, then we're on the right track, okay? And when it is rewarded and still okay to brag about wrongdoing, then the systemic threshold has not yet been reached. And I think if this country or other nations suffer from bribery and corruption to a scale that is uncomfortable for those that observe it and that see others just pass economically by that are better off, then we need help from all sides. The bottom-up approach is you as a professional and future manager, future leader, for example, using CPAA or other organizations to unite and create a force. And of course, like Professor Umar described, if the law is not yet in the right position, then professionals and academics like himself and others will be able to influence decision makers to step up to make it a better system. And both can occur rather swiftly. I'm not saying tomorrow or the day after, but even a decade is a small period of time in which much can happen. And I would assume that a country like Indonesia, which is, with its size and its willingness to become so much better at a very fast pace, can probably achieve good outcomes in short periods of time. And that is yet to see, perhaps, when Professor Umar described some of the challenges. But I'm very confident that at some point, there's a tipping point where society is not willing to sustain anymore the wrongdoing around them. And Professor Umar is one of those detectives, science detectives, that goes after these and exposes the problems in the system. And I think together with the forces from bottom up and a systemic solution, help is on the way. So what I ask all students is in their careers, don't get the tattoo of the wrongdoing on your skin. Because if you get it now and in 10 years the world is a better place, you still have the same tattoo. That means the same mark of wrongdoing. So sustain the force that pushes you in the wrong direction and continue the fight with systemic solutions and from bottom up with government, with businesses to make this world a better place. And I'm very confident this will happen sooner than later in case these problems still exist meaningfully in this country.
Mr. Gerhard. Okay, Regi, hope they answer your questions, yeah? All right. Okay, there is a question from the screen. It is from CP. She said that, can money laundry be detected by using HU model? I think this question will be addressed to Professor Haryono Umar. If you've got any other questions, okay, prepare the questions now. Please unmute first.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Opal. And the HU model is especially, for detecting any manipulation of the financial statement. We can using the Benes model. It's already long time ago, but it still exists until now. But especially for the corruption, there's no model in the world that can detect any corruption. So that's why start from the first star in 2016, and then in 2020, we develop and do the research for the how to how to detect any corruption. It's really based on my experiences. When I was I served the KPK, and also I was an Inspector General of the one of the ministry in Indonesia. I found that actually any fraud, any corruption can be detected early. We can detect early in order to prevent. So that's why until now prevention in corruption is sometimes I call it it's not effective. The corruption is sometimes some kind of the criminal. But the so far the prevention is only using by the seminar, by the explanation and etc. 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 I think it's not much. So that's why we need the any tools for detect. So I call this one. Let me share it one more time. Okay, this is I call this one is the HU model. The HU model. This is the model is pretty much the same. We can call this one is the regression model. Using this one is the corruption, and it causes by the pressure, opportunity, rationalization, capability, and lack of integrity. This is special. And from the model, we can categorize three categories of the any organization that they could be, categorized green, gray, or red. Red is mean, we can say that, potentially, or there is no indication of fraud or corruption. Gray is 50-50. There is indication of the fraud and corruption, but also, they could be said that a little bit clean. And whenever the organization we categorize into green, it means they are clean. So auditor can go forward to do the audit. So far, auditor, whenever they get, assignment to do the audit, they directly do the audit without understanding about any situation, any problem with the financial statement and the condition. And so far, according our research, especially for this year 2020, we gather information from nationwide, from any district, also the city, and also the provinces, also the ministries, also the some other organization in Indonesia. We collect all of the information about that, especially for the financial statement, and we find out that the most causes of the corruption is the lack of integrity. So that's why government offer any rules. We can call the Peraturan Menpan Nomor 10 2019, and also the ISO 371 about the SMAPS, System Management Anti Penyuapan, ISO and also POJK number 39 2019 about the ISAP, Index Strategy Anti Fraud, and etc. So that's why I would like I will be very happy whenever anybody or UTS or the CPA wants to join we can continue for researching in order to make sure that this model is really can be accepted, can be implemented by the organization. So far, the books and also the journal, the Scopus journal is already spread out, and some citizens already make a station for our publication. So I think it will be very happy whenever we can make something like cooperation between Perbanas Institute and also the UTS and also the XPA Australia in order to create how to prevent any corruption, because in Indonesia, corruption is very, very big, toxic, not like unlike the Australia. Australia is already clean, but Indonesia. So that's why, according to the happiness map delivered by the WHO, the United Nations, there are the map between the map of the happiness countries and the map of the corruption countries delivered by the Transparency International is pretty much the same,
All right. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. And I think it has already answered the question from Mbak Siti, yeah? Okay, I think it will be one question if you want to raise any questions for the last activity. Yes, okay, sir. Okay, would you like to stand up and introduce yourself? What's your name?
I'm Info.
Nico? Enko. Okay. Enko.
I would like to ask
I'm Enko, and I would like to ask about the question, especially for as you know, the direction is not only by the people, but although also
Please talk on.
And here I want to talk about the motivation of people, how do they make their decision in terms of increasing the wealth. So I just want to ask you, based on your background as a finance, I would like to ask about what is the role of finance education in overcome this problem? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably the most difficult question that you could ask. Thanks for sending me off with a real task. So I think finance plays a unique role because typically it's related to wealth as accumulated in assets. And I think you relate to the idea that people that are probably very wealthy and perhaps own a lot of assets also are partaking in control over business entities, because by definition, if you own, for example, large amounts of shares in businesses, then you have influence onto the business. And of course, that exerts influence into society. And so, not sure if I get your question correctly, but there's differences between people that are wealthy and probably people that are not that wealthy when it comes to the ability to leverage their means to exercise good or bad behavior. And in particular, assets can be used for many things. Obviously, perhaps I would accumulate assets to hopefully save for retirement and have a comfortable retirement, to feed my family. I enjoy maybe buying a stock in order to pay that it pays a dividend that I ongoingly continue to support my family. That's one example of using financial markets. And of course, the retirement saving is a big element of that. When I retire, I want to be comfortable enough that I can buy food and retire with dignity. By contrast, of course, assets can also be used maybe to transfer money around the globe or to hide money that is perhaps being accumulated in a non-legal fashion. So, and this directly relates to the topic that Professor Uma has presented today, corruption. And what I found most interesting, what Professor Uma did, and I'm inviting you to not overlook the contribution he's making here. Corruption is one of these problems where we have no data. And the reason is when someone is corrupt, they do not post that on the internet. They don't say, oh, this morning I was corrupt and I pocketed $10,000 and I got this in return for it, okay? There's no data available. And last night we had the chance, someone said, how can we measure good behavior, which relates now to your question in terms of the contribution of people that have probably more means. Those people can also be much more bad or much more worse when it comes to these bad behaviors. How can we measure good behavior? And good behavior would be, how can we measure, for example, the absence of corruption or the engagement of corruption as a measurement for bad? And usually, and that's what we concluded last night, it's very difficult. The absence of data doesn't provide us with good answers. And the only option we have, which the Corruption Perception Index is doing, we ask people for their view. So I can go now to Indonesia, I can call Professor Uma and say, please name a few public officials that are willing anonymously to talk to me. And I'm recording their answers, right? And they tell me what they think is happening with rich people and with poor people in terms of bad behavior in the country. The problem is, these are self-reported, perceived pieces of information that I need to take now. What Professor Uma is doing with his wonderful model is, he actually makes an attempt to overcome the bridge of having qualitative data, that means arguments, descriptions of wrongdoings that are sometimes very fuzzy, very noisy. There's not much data on the wrongdoing. And on the other side, he uses proxies or drivers of these decision makings and puts them in his model on the right-hand side. And so then he tries to explain using econometrics, which you perhaps also learn in your studies, to make decisions on countries. He showed nicely the 3 types of countries in his model, the red ones up to the green ones. And so I think, if you ask me what is the role of finance in here, in Professor Uma's model, we already have some of these drivers built in, pressures, and he also had the financial component in his HU model, which I found was very interesting. So we can use finance and try to explain the wrongdoings or the magnitude of wrongdoings by trying to identify finance as a driver. And you could use many, many measures to try to connect the two. You could either use perhaps the wealth inequality in a country. You could use stock market participation, or for example, people that are rather not wealthy, because that perhaps indicates an ability to overcome inequality in the long run. You could also try to assess as a measure maybe the relative share in people in a country that are extremely wealthy, extremely rich. And so what I'm trying to encourage you is, when you think about these problems, use similar approaches like Professor Uma does, data-driven approaches in order to approximate, in order to attempt to establish connections and to make inferences, and perhaps to convince with this evidence that is very hard to produce and to generate. It's an innovation that Professor Uma presented, to use those means to then go to the decision makers and say, my HU model says that the pressure from finance, that is your question, is extreme. We have to oversee stock markets better to better understand what's happening in the markets and who within a day becomes extra rich and places and parks some money in the stock market or in the real estate market. What I would like to add to Professor Uma, what he said earlier, he said corruption is so difficult. We talked about why. There's no data, there's no visibility, there's no real understanding often what really happens. Although Professor Uma is an expert, he knows perhaps the magnitude of the wrongdoing. But the good news is, at least in some of the markets, including Australia, if you do wrong, including wrong in capital markets, insider trading, or if you put untaxed money to work, someone will catch you, because data techniques can catch you. And if markets implement these techniques, for example, techniques that are similar to what Professor Uma presented today, then the markets are able to catch the thieves. I give you examples. Australians overseas that have engaged in stock market transactions for Australian banks over many years thought they can come home and live off their prosperity that they probably acquired through insider trading overseas, and they thought they were safe. But the data sits on a hard drive and can be analyzed at any given time. So if I come to Indonesia and I engage in bad capital market behavior with my wealthy state, with my pocket full of US dollars, and I come to the market and I do wrong, for example, by means of insider trading, maybe I escape tomorrow and I'm not being detected tomorrow. But the data is ready to be analyzed anytime from now on, even if it's 5 years later. And so what I'm trying to tell you is the fingerprints you leave everywhere now, what you do, including the wrongdoing that pertains to financial assets, moving them, hiding money, hiding from the taxman the money, those are fingerprints that are likely to be sustained forever. And if that's true, your wrongdoing is even worse than the tattoo I'm earlier expressed, because it hangs over your head. And then perhaps Professor Uma's stick becomes a very big one, because when the country is ready and has those penalties in place and the means to detect it, and perhaps the accounting support by means of people or AI, then it becomes a very, very critical situation for the wrongdoers. So I think what I'm telling you is the fingerprints that those people leave and the inequality that now pertains to maybe more ability to do wrong for the rich will probably haunt them in the long run, because if someone comes after them in just a few years down the road when the law has improved, as Professor Uma pointed out today, they may be taken and being responsible for their actions. So while this is a long answer and tries to shed light on your question is a very, very difficult one, because financial markets are often what some people say the nucleus of wealth preservation, generation, and also offer a lot of dark doors in and out of markets. And I think that helps those that want to do wrong by moving money around the world, either in or in new types of assets. And therefore, financial markets need to be carefully watched. And any nation needs to be carefully looking at markets and how to regulate these markets to preserve their function, which is very important for economic prosperity and the functioning of everything around us. But we must not let it be a field where there's no referee. Without referees, we have big trouble, and corruption and the fruits of corruption can be hidden, washed, and never served. There will be such a role of finance. We can play a very significant role in general with the people, but it needs to be carefully managed so that we don't let financial markets be the unobserved field. And I hope that helps a bit.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much for the comprehensive answer, Dr. Gerhard. Okay. The question from Enko has already concluded our session today, ladies and gentlemen. So please give a very big applause to our speakers, Professor Haryono Umar and also Dr. Gerhard. Okay. For their fruitful presentations. Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's because of today is Friday. We need to go to the Friday prayers, and then the time is almost there. So we would like to say thank you very much for your presentation, and please do apologize if there is any inconvenient things during this presentation and our session today. And we would like to see you again on a different occasion, and I would like to say Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin and goodbye, and I'll see you later. And before we end up our agenda today. We would like to take a picture and we will give the, yes, there will be the prizes from Professor Haryono. Okay, the prizes will be given to Regi and then CV and Enko. Okay, the 2 books will be given to CV and Regi ya, Bapak. Okay, yes, okay, and then Enko will get another prizes from the committee. Okay, we would like to invite Regi and yes, Regi, please. Yeah, all right. Okay, probably can take a picture for the books. Well done.
And ladies and gentlemen, so we would like to hand the certificate to Dr. Gerhard from Professor Haryono Umar.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Okay. Now I would like to invite to have a take picture together. Okay, all the audience can stand up. Okay, please stand up and come closer, and we will take a selfie pictures. Yeah, Prof. Yeah, yes, Dr. Gerhard. Pak Chong, you may join. Dr. Thomas, yes, please. Okay. Pak Putra. Yeah, yeah.
Take off the mask.
Thank you so much for your
Ini kelihatan nggak?
Ada mungkin berdiri boleh ya?
Iya.
Berdiri di atas bangku gitu.
Agak nyamping. Maju. Nggak kelihatan ya? Yang foto mesti naik.
Iya, yang
Oke, hitung ya. 3, 2, 1, once again. 3, 2, 1. Freestyle.
Oke, Perbanas Jaya. Oke, when I say Perbanas Jaya, oke ya. Perbanas Jaya. Oke, thank you very much.